Daily Detroit is brought to you by the community. Support our work at patreon.com/dailydetroit.
Welcome to your Daily Detroit, recorded on Thursday, December 3rd, 2020. Today's show is in three parts. First, an update on the latest locally with the pandemic. Second, we take you to Detroit's east side and check in on Chandler Park. Alex Allen joins us from the Chandler Park Conservancy to tell us about their Skatepark project and how you can help. Third, we go to Ferndale. Aaron Quittel shares updates on their mobility and walkability plans and what's next. I'm Jer Stays, and let's get started with the latest pandemic numbers. 175 deaths reported Thursday, and more than 7,100 confirmed cases bring Michigan's pandemic totals to more than 380,300 cases and 9,580 deaths. More than 80% of Michigan intensive care unit beds are currently full with patients, and health experts are bracing for more cases and hospitalizations over the coming weeks. Because despite calls to stay home over the holidays, a new study shows that 58% of Americans did not. That is less than last year, but shows a majority of people did not heed calls to not mix houses during the holidays. Air travel was down by half from last year, but still 1 million people took to the skies. Speaking of travel, Delta Airlines has their second busiest hub right here at Detroit Metro Airport. It is the jumping-off point for many overseas trips. So starting December 15th, international travelers coming into the United States through Delta will have to provide contact tracing information that will be directly shared with the Centers for Disease Control. The airline is the first to participate, and it will eventually roll out to 9 major carriers. The 5 pieces of information required will be the passenger's full name, email address, address in the United States, and 2 phone numbers. This will allow the CDC to do more intense contact tracing going forward. Well, there are new guidelines from the CDC, and they're recommending that quarantine be lowered to 10 days instead of the previous 14 if you've had known close contact with someone with coronavirus. This is somewhat based in science, but also social behaviors, as many people are simply not doing the full 14 days. The state of Michigan will adopt these new guidelines. However, an additional recommendation of 7 days if you then have a negative test was not taken up by state health officials. An interim report shows progress in dealing with the disparities between African Americans and white COVID-19 outcomes. State officials were clear to note that the issues aren't due to skin color, but the life and work circumstances of many in those groups. Many are essential workers or do not have jobs where you can easily socially distance. There also is historically less access to healthcare for minority groups. Here's the progress in numbers. From spring to the fall, the average cases per million per day for African-American Michiganders dropped from 176 to 59. At the same time, the probable deaths per million per day among African-American Michiganders dropped significantly, from 21.7 to just 1. And remember that Andiamo restaurant owner Joe Vicari, he had said that he and his company were going to defy Michigan Health Department orders and keep their restaurants open if the indoor dining bans did not lift. Well, yeah. New reporting from Crain's Detroit Business shows he has backed down. In a meeting among about 100 restaurant owners, Vicari changed his tune. He reportedly said that, quote, "I don't want to disobey government orders. It's a losing situation," unquote. And, quote, "I'm telling fellow restaurateurs to not go against ordinance. It's going to cost more money than we want it to. It's not worth it," unquote. It turns out the state has wide berth when it comes to revoking liquor licenses, and they're pretty hard to get back once you've lost them. I'll put a link to all that in the show notes. Beyond that, a majority of the public in poll after poll over the last few months supports Governor Gretchen Whitmer. If there's a lesson I've learned the past few years, what the loud, very confident people say on the internet can feel like it's what most people think, but often it's not. Joining me virtually is Alex Allen, head of the Chandler Park Conservancy. Welcome to Daily Detroit.
Thank you. It's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for the time, because longtime listeners of the podcast will know that we are fans of the East Side in multiple ways and grew up in some ways over there. Also, we've highlighted work with Jefferson Chalmers, other things happening. Well, Alex, I got to ask, what made you fall in love with Chandler Park?
Well, I've been working on the East Side for a long time, and I was doing some work around bike lanes And this project came about. I was a part of a process where the community was doing some neighborhood planning around the park, and I got heavily involved in it. And I just continued to work with them when they created a board, and eventually it got to the point where they needed to hire some staff to get this off the ground. And I guess I was in the right place at the right time.
Well, I know personally, having family that was all over the east side, there are family photos of Chandler Park, and it was part of memories for so many people. And so when I saw this project coming up with this skate park, I was like, this is a great way to kind of bring the amenities to, what people want today. Before we get into that, what are the kind of amenities at Chandler Park now, and what's kind of the state of what's going on?
Well, Chandler Park is a 100-year-old park, and they've had a golf course there for a long time, and they also have the water park, which is a hidden gem that more people need to use. But for the last 5 years, we've been working hard to create some new amenities at Chandler Park. So we have the first phase of our athletic field has been developed, so it's marked for football, soccer, and lacrosse. We also have some new tennis courts, and they feature some small tot lot courts, or younger kids could play, kids that are 3, 4, or 5, as well as, adults. The new park plan is cornered in a stormwater management system. One of the cornerstones of that is a marshland. We have a marshland that's on the east end of the park to collect stormwater. We're also going to be using that space to teach environmental sciences, because with the new marshland, we are attracting, birds, bees, snakes, new plants and things like that. It's a great place to teach environmental education, so we'll be doing that. There's also a meditation garden that is in the park as well, for people to just kind of come out and cool out and just sit and chill in the park a little bit. And we have some plans for some other things. We're going to be putting in a hoop house to do some community gardening. We're going to be working with the Grant Hill Foundation and Fila Foundation, hopefully next season, to put some new basketball courts in. And, we don't do this by ourselves. We work really, really close with the city of Detroit, their general services department. They're great folks over there. So we partner with them to kind of put these things in the park. More recently, the last 6 months or so, we have a new walking path that goes to the park, so people can walk to the park and don't have to walk in the street. And we just had some new outdoor exercise equipment installed maybe about a week ago. So we're excited about all those additions.
Yeah, as a longtime city resident, I'm really glad to hear that, because, Detroit residents deserve great parks too.
Absolutely. Yes, that's what we want to do. We want people to have a good experience when they come to the park. So we work with the city to make sure the parks are clean. We make sure that we have positive programming in the park. And so that's just part of what we do.
So why a skate park?
The city of Detroit is trying to address some of the needs of young people. If you ever go downtown, it used to be a time, it's still a time where kids are skating around downtown through the streets of the businesses and things like that, skating down in Hart Plaza. And, that's not always the best place for them to be. So they built a new skate park in Southwest Detroit, in Riverside Park, which, young people can go to. And they want to expand the footprint of skate parks. And so they asked us to partner with them to build a skate park on the east side. And so we talked to the community about it, and they thought it would be a good idea. So we got some grant funding from the Tony Hawk Foundation, a matching grant program to build a skate park. So we're really doing this under the leadership of the city of Detroit.
Yeah, looking at these renderings, it's pretty big. Can you talk about what kind of the size and kind of the size of the project?
Yeah, that project is about 12,000 square feet.
Woo!
And it is designed for new skaters, so somebody who's just learning how to skateboard. BMX bikes and scooters could use the skate park as well. And so we designed this for new skaters and skaters that may have a minimum skill. But, experienced skaters could enjoy it as well.
Yeah, so what's kind of the goal on this, and the timeline, and how people can get involved?
The goal here is to break ground for that sometime in the spring. And National Go Skate Day is in June the 21st. And we're going to try to have it done and completed by then. And right now we have a fundraising campaign going on. If people go to patronicity.com/skate, they'll find our campaign. and they can make a donation to this particular project. We've raised about $400,000 already. We're going to raise another $100,000 to bring that rendering to life. So we're in the final stages of that fundraising.
Well, and I'll be sure to put a link to all of that in our show notes and on our website, dailydetroit.com. So, Alex, what are the kinds of things, the pandemic has kind of changed how people use parks and, looking at things going forward. What are some of the other things you're excited about for next year as the weather starts to thaw?
The pandemic kind of started in March and people were inside. As soon as the weather broke, people wanted to get outside. So the parks were a good place for people to social distance and get out and walk and get some fresh air and things like that. So we saw a lot more people actually in the park in small groups. So we want to continue to educate people about that, allow space for people to do that. And so as you know, with this pandemic, it's kind of a day-by-day thing. We plan things for the summer. We usually have a summer camp and some other activities, but we got to kind of wait to see how the pandemic goes. But the park will be open and available for people to do small group gatherings, to walk, to get some exercise. We're going to be looking to do some yoga classes and Tai Chi with small groups that could be socially distanced apart. So we're going to be doing a lot of things around health and mental health in the parks coming up in the spring and in the summer.
That's all really great to hear. Well, Alex, Alan, thank you so much for your time. Chandler Park Conservancy, chandlerparkconservancy.org. I'll put a link to everything, including the Skatepark project in the show notes. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Joining me on the line is Erin Quittel. She is the Environmental Sustainability Planner for the city of Ferndale. Welcome to Daily Detroit.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so let's talk about version 2.0 of this Ferndale Moves plan. Ferndale is one of the suburbs that's really kind of taken a lead when it comes to walkability, bikeability, looking at kinds of transit-oriented issues. What's kind of the update and what's kind of the goal of doing an update?
Ferndale Moves is a plan that is all about mobility, how people move around Ferndale. And the first iteration was really focused on bike infrastructure and how we can improve our infrastructure throughout the city. This 2.0 update is really focused now on equity and how everybody can move safely throughout our community. So we're looking at things like sidewalks, how wide they are, how accessible they are, how easy is it to get from point A to point B, regardless of how you get there, and really focusing more on the people that are moving throughout Ferndale versus cars.
Different communities tend to have different sets of needs that they express. One thing that strikes me about Ferndale is that it never got rid of its grid. It's always been kind of a dense layout compared to many suburbs in the region. Do you find that there's like a lot of interest and demand around mobility and walkability?
Yeah, absolutely. We've had a lot of community engagement to talk about everything from improving sidewalks to crosswalks to new bike infrastructure and everything in between. So we've had quite a bit of community engagement around it.
And what have you kind of learned from residents as they've been part of this process?
A lot of it is affirming what staff already knows at the city. We have some major corridors that pass through Ferndale. Woodward bisects the community. It's really difficult to cross at times. Sometimes people feel unsafe. And we've been doing a lot of work and listening to that. And it's really been affirming to kind of the trouble spots that we already know about.
Riding a bike is also a priority. I record this show in the city of Detroit where there's been a lot of bike lane infrastructure. But up in Ferndale, you all have done just a lot around that. And it seems like biking, when I went through these kind of like the update on your Ferndale Moves site, that kind of had the most comments.
Yeah, we have a lot of protected bike lanes and thoroughfares. We really try to think about our space in the region, how we connect to other infrastructure in our surrounding communities. And so that definitely is a focus of ours, making sure that the folks that are riding their bikes and moving from point A to point B have a safe way to do so. And we think that this 2.0 plan will only offer even more recommendations for how we can improve it for everybody.
So how do you think a process like this helps competitively position Ferndale and serve its residents?
Having plans like this really allow us to have a lot of opportunities for grants. We've been successful in solidifying various grants in the past, and really that's how we were able to do a lot of the infrastructure improvements. It shows that we're really intentional with thinking about mobility, and allows us to kind of have a showcase and show other communities how they can design and develop around mobility and various transit options.
Yeah, and are you finding that there's a lot of traffic within the community? So it's something where, say, a Ferndale resident maybe lives a half mile north or south of that downtown strip on 9 Mile, and they want to get to it, but kind of Woodward's in the way. Are a lot of Ferndale residents using those walkable and bikeable options to kind of move around their own city?
Yeah, we definitely see folks using the bike lanes and, obviously walking downtown and that sort of thing, utilizing MoGo, which is our bike share program that we have in the area. But, Woodward is a barrier of sorts. It's difficult to cross sometimes. It can feel unsafe, even though it may or may not be unsafe. And thinking about how people are moving around Ferndale and especially across Woodward is really important. That's what we seek to do through the plan, is figure out solutions so people can move a little bit freer, feel comfortable, and be safe when they're doing it.
I know that there are some opportunities coming up for people to get involved in this process. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, we actually have a community meeting coming up on December 9th, which is next Wednesday, from 6:30 to 8. We're going to spend some time talking about some existing conditions, about what we know today, talk about some recommendations on what we think we could be moving towards in the future. And really, that's the point of community engagement that we're really looking for. Looking at our recommendations, providing additional feedback. Is this something that's true? Do we need to change anything? And then we're also going to spend some time talking about Woodward, as it is one of our main corridors in our community, and give an update of some of the work that we've been doing to evaluate the corridor for future mobility opportunities.
And when you look at Woodward, what are kinds of the things that you're thinking or are on the table, or are you still kind of sketching that out?
Yeah, so we're thinking about safety. We're thinking about access. How do people traverse along Woodward that aren't using cars? How safe do they feel when they're either walking or biking or rolling or meandering along Woodward? Looking at crosswalks, looking at signal timing, really everything in and around the corridor from about 10 Mile to 8 Mile.
So after this hearing, what's next? And is there kind of a timetable on this, or is this still coming together?
We're looking at hopefully adopting Ferndale Moves official plan sometime in the new year. We certainly still have engagement opportunities that we have, and we're still looking for feedback, but our team is working diligently on getting the plan together. So hopefully, like I said, adopting it sometime in the new year, January, February, sometime around then.
Well, Erin Quittel, thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate you shedding some light on what you all are doing there.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Well, we are done for today. Thanks so much to our members on Patreon who make this show possible. With options starting at just $1, you can help us push Metro Detroit's conversation forward. Tomorrow, Devin O'Reilly and Randy Walker join me to celebrate Boozmas and some great ways to support local business and get into the holiday spirit with spirits. With that, I'm Jer Stays. Take care of each other, and we'll get through this together.